Most people don't fail because they're weak. They fail because they're surrounded by too much noise to ever hear who they really are. Sometimes the smartest thing you can do for your future is to disappear, not run away from life, but step away from everything that keeps you small. If you feel lost, drained, or stuck, this might be exactly what you need. Step one, disappear from noise, not life. There comes a point in your life where everything around you becomes so loud that you can no longer hear yourself think. Notifications, conversations, obligations, expectations, all pulling at your attention, all demanding pieces of you that you no longer have the energy to give. And without noticing, you start living reactively instead of intentionally. You stop choosing your direction and simply get dragged by whatever noise is closest. Disappearing from that noise is not an act of weakness, it's an act of self-preservation. You're not leaving life behind. You're stepping away from the chaos long enough to understand who you are beneath everyone else's voices. Noise drains you, silence rebuilds you, and sometimes the only way to find yourself again is to walk away from everything that never truly saw you. Most people don't realize how overstimulated they are until they finally step out of the environment that keeps them anxious, distracted, and emotionally scattered. Noise isn't just sound. It's people who drain you, responsibilities that aren't yours, endless scrolling, comparison, invisible pressure to keep up with everyone else's highlight reels. It's the weight of constant connectivity. When you disappear from the noise, you are not abandoning your life. You're reclaiming it. You're giving your nervous system space to breathe, your mind room to think, and your heart the freedom to feel without being influenced by external expectations. Silence is uncomfortable at first because it exposes what you've been avoiding, but that discomfort is the doorway to clarity. Walking away from noise doesn't mean disappearing into isolation forever. It's a temporary extraction from the environment that is suffocating your growth. You don't have to cut everyone out, you simply stop giving everyone access. You don't have to quit your responsibilities, you just separate what matters from what drains you. You start saying no without guilt. You create distance from people who misunderstand your peace as weakness, and you let yourself exist without performing or proving anything. This kind of disappearance is intentional, it's strategic. It's the reset button most people never press because they're afraid of what silence will reveal. But stepping back is often the only way to see your life clearly again. Because the clarity you need rarely comes from the noise, it comes from the space you create when you finally walk away from it. Step two, solitude is the reset button. Solitude is often misunderstood as loneliness, but the truth is far more powerful. Solitude is the moment the world finally stops pulling at you and you can hear yourself without interruption. It's the space where your mind unclenches, where your body relaxes, where your thoughts stop competing with the constant demands of other people. When you step into solitude intentionally, it becomes a reset button for your entire life. It strips away the noise, the pressure, the external expectations, and leaves you with the raw version of yourself, the version that's honest, unfiltered, and untouched by the roles you're forced to play. Most people never meet that version because they're never alone long enough to see who they've actually become beneath the layers of performance and obligation. Solitude is not an escape, it's a confrontation, a grounding, a recalibration of your inner world. When you spend time alone, patterns that were blurry suddenly become clear. You see the habits that are ruining your focus. You feel the emotional wounds you've been numbing with distractions. You realize which relationships feel heavy and which ones feel real. You notice how much time you've been wasting, how little you've been investing in yourself, and how deeply you've been tolerating things that no longer align with the person you want to become. Solitude forces self-awareness because there is no one left to blame, no one left to perform for, no one left to imitate. It's just you, your truth, and the discomfort that comes with facing the reality you've avoided. But within that discomfort lies the doorway to transformation. You cannot fix what you refuse to see, and solitude highlights everything you've been ignoring. And something shifts when you allow yourself to regularly step into that quiet space. Your mind stops racing. Your emotions make sense. Your priorities rearrange themselves. You stop giving your energy to things that used to drain you because solitude shows you exactly how costly those things are. Suddenly, silence becomes comforting instead of frightening. You start craving clarity instead of distraction. You start wanting depth instead of noise. You begin choosing yourself not out of selfishness, but out of necessity, because solitude teaches you that you cannot build a strong, grounded, disciplined version of yourself if you are constantly entangled in people, conversations, and environments that keep you disconnected from your own inner world. Step 3, burn the old patterns. There is a moment in your growth where you realize the life you want cannot coexist with the patterns you've been repeating. It's not a gentle realization. It's sharp, uncomfortable, almost painful. You begin to see how much of your identity has been built on habits that keep you small, reactive, and predictable. The late night scrolling, the emotional impulsiveness, the people pleasing, the constant search for validation, the attachment to comfort. All of it forms a version of you that cannot carry the future you crave. Burning the old patterns isn't symbolic, it's literal. It's the process of dismantling the reflexes and cravings that have shaped your days for years. It's pulling the truth into the light and admitting that the version of you who survived up until now cannot be the one who leads you forward. Reinvention demands sacrifice, and the first sacrifice is always the old version of you. When you start identifying your patterns, you see how deeply they run. Maybe you've been operating on autopilot, reacting to life instead of directing it. Maybe you've been choosing comfort over progress because comfort is familiar, even when it's destructive. Maybe you've been surrounding yourself with people who keep you stagnant because growth would threaten the identity they expect from you. Patterns are sneaky. They look harmless in the moment, but they compound quietly, shaping the trajectory of your entire life. Burning them means interrupting your own cycles, catching yourself in the moment, and choosing differently, even when it feels unnatural. Growth often feels wrong at first because you're breaking behavioral wiring that's years or decades old, but nothing changes until your patterns change. Motivation is temporary, discipline is built, identity is rewritten. And the truth is, burning the old patterns is not a one-time event. It's a continuous, relentless process. You will want to slip back into who you were because old patterns are comfortable, predictable, and easy. But every time you resist the urge to return to what's familiar, you build strength. Every time you choose the harder option, you reclaim control. Every time you set a boundary, walk away from a toxic dynamic, or stop yourself from repeating yesterday's mistake, you're creating a new internal blueprint. The fire you walk through becomes the thing that shapes you. You don't evolve by adding more on top of your life. You evolve by stripping away everything that weakens you, everything that distracts you, everything that keeps you rooted in a life you have outgrown. Step 4. Build a quiet, private routine. A quiet, private routine is one of the most powerful tools for reinvention because it shifts your focus from performing for the world to building yourself from the inside out. Most people live loudly, always talking about what they plan to do, seeking approval for their efforts, broadcasting every small improvement. But real change doesn't happen under a spotlight. It happens in silence, when no one knows what you're doing, when no one is clapping for you, when no one is validating your progress. A private routine allows you to detach from external noise and stay devoted to your own development. It's a commitment to showing up for yourself even when no one else sees it, understands it, or acknowledges it. This quiet discipline becomes the foundation of your transformation because it belongs entirely to you, not to the expectations of others. In silence, your routine becomes your anchor. You start structuring your days in a way that supports your future self instead of feeding your old habits. Waking up earlier isn't about productivity aesthetics. It's about giving your mind space before the world starts demanding pieces of you. Working out isn't about pleasing anyone. It's about building a body that can handle the life you're aiming for. Reading, learning, journaling, these aren't activities for show. They are tools that reshape your inner world slowly and consistently. When your routine is private, you remove the pressure to perform, and you begin to track your progress based on who you're becoming rather than how others perceive you. You build a strong internal rhythm, one that doesn't collapse the moment someone judges it or questions it. And the deeper you sink into this private rhythm, the more you begin to change in ways that are impossible to ignore. Not because you're announcing anything, but because your energy shifts. You become calmer, more focused, more self-respecting. You stop wasting time because your routine teaches you the value of it. You stop explaining your choices because your discipline speaks louder than your words. You become protective of your mornings, your habits, your mental space, your emotional bandwidth. A private routine also keeps you accountable. When you don't broadcast your goals, you eliminate the illusion of productivity that comes from talking about change instead of creating it. What you do every day in silence becomes who you are. The small, consistent actions done behind closed doors slowly build a version of you that is stronger, wiser, sharper, and far more grounded than the person you were when your life was shaped by noise instead of intention. Step 5. Reinvent yourself without announcements. There is a certain power in changing your life quietly, without telling anyone, without making declarations, without seeking validation for every step you take. Reinvention becomes stronger when it's done silently because the moment you start announcing your intentions, you invite opinions, judgments, and expectations that can pull you off your path. When you reinvent yourself privately, no one gets the chance to discourage you, mock your ambition, or question your direction. You protect your growth from interference. You give your mind the space to focus entirely on the transformation instead of worrying about how others perceive it. Reinvention is personal. It's delicate, it's raw, it needs protection in its early stages, like a seed planted underground. And the quieter you stay, the deeper your roots grow. People often announce their goals because they want accountability or applause, but both come with risks. Accountability from outsiders can quickly turn into pressure, and applause can become addictive, making you chase external approval instead of internal progress. When you grow privately, there is no facade to maintain. You can fail without embarrassment, restart without explanation, try again without anyone watching. Your process becomes yours alone, honest, messy, unfiltered. You begin to understand that true transformation isn't something you talk about, it's something you become. And becoming requires time in the dark, far away from the noise of expectations. This silence gives you clarity. It lets you experiment with new versions of yourself without feeling judged for every change you make. As your reinvention continues quietly, something powerful starts to happen internally. You stop seeking reassurance from others because your confidence comes from the actions you take, not the opinions you receive. You stop explaining your choices because you no longer need permission to grow. You stop defending your boundaries because you finally understand they exist for you, not for them. Reinventing yourself without announcements also exposes who really sees you. When you no longer share every detail of your life, the people who only stayed for access drift away, and the people who value you stay without needing updates. Your silence filters your relationships, reveals your priorities, and strengthens your self-trust. And in that quiet evolution, you rise into a stronger, more grounded identity. Not because you demanded recognition, but because you built yourself in a space untouched by judgment, noise, or the need for applause. Step 6. Return unrecognizable. There is something powerful about disappearing long enough to rebuild yourself so completely that when you return, you don't look like the person who left. Not because you've changed your appearance, but because your entire energy has shifted. People see it before you speak. The calm in your eyes, the firmness in your posture, the quiet certainty in your decisions. Returning unrecognizable isn't about proving anything to anyone. It's the natural outcome of deep private transformation. You step back into the world with a presence that feels different, stronger, more grounded. You no longer carry the same insecurities, the same fear of judgment, the same need for validation. You've burned through too much inner chaos to ever return as the same person. Reinvention changes the way you move, the way you think, the way you respond, the way you exist. When you return unrecognizable, it's because you've outgrown the patterns, relationships, and environments that once shaped your identity. The things that used to trigger you no longer touch you. The people who once had control over your emotions no longer influence your peace. The dreams that felt impossible now feel like obligations because you finally believe in your own capability. You've learned to trust yourself after spending time alone, and that self-trust shows in every decision you make. You don't explain yourself as much. You don't apologize for your boundaries. You don't shrink to fit into spaces that were never meant for the person you've become. Your silence isn't avoidance, it's strength. Your distance isn't coldness, it's clarity. You've returned with a new internal architecture that no longer collapses under pressure or crumbles under opinions. And the world doesn't always welcome this version of you easily. Some people feel threatened by your growth, some become distant because you no longer tolerate what you once accepted, and some try to pull you back into your old identity because it made them more comfortable. But returning unrecognizable also attracts new alignment, new opportunities, new people, new paths that match the person you've built in private. You don't seek validation because your transformation has already validated itself through the discipline, solitude, and sacrifice it required. You carry yourself differently because you know what it took to become this version. And as you step into the world again, you realize that the goal was never to impress anyone. It was to become someone you could finally respect, someone you could trust, someone you could rely on, someone you had been trying to meet your entire life. Your transformation doesn't need an audience. It needs your commitment. Step back, rebuild quietly, and return as someone even you didn't expect. You don't have to announce your growth, just become it. Your new life begins the moment you decide you're done living the old one.